please welcome to the stage Charlie Walsh, Director and Head of Residential Sales and Marketing at Westminster Development Services, the Old War Office, and to conduct the interview, the author, critic, columnist, broadcaster and curator, Stephen Bailey. They're going to be talking about the OWO, design and much else besides. Take it away. Thank you very much.
Well, I'm not sure who's going to begin. We're in a strange position. Charlie and I were just talking before. We're not quite certain about whether he's interviewing me or I'm interviewing him. So we're just going to see how it goes. I just can't help resist starting off with a wonderful anecdote about meeting a fabulously good-looking audience like this. And it's something which Enrico Caruso, the opera singer, said. He said, I never make love first thing in the morning because it's bad for my voice and bad for my health. And besides, you never know who you're going to meet later in the day. So here I am meeting lots of...
It's a good man to live by, Stephen.
Lots of fascinating people. Now, you must tell me to shut up, because but I'm just going to, let's just see what happens. The great philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche, who sort of died of tertiary syphilis in Turin, once said that all of life is a question of taste. And that's to say about the things we choose to express our values, the clothes we wear, the choices we make, and how we put our various preferences in a hierarchy. And I think that's still true. I mean, I think what fascinates me about taste, and this is, I think, I'll demonstrate in a moment how it's relevant to what we're talking about with the OWO Raffles development. I think it's still true today. I mean, nowadays, anybody will tell you, be completely frank about their, for instance, sexual preferences or how much money they've got. There are no taboos about these things anymore. But people are really squeamish about taste. The reason why is the taste, the clothes you wear, the car you drive, the place you live, actually reveals more about you than your erotic impulses or how much you've got in the bank. So that's always, for me, a sort of context. But I think today, you can also say that all of life is a question of branding as well, which is related to taste. And that's my sort of first question, I think, Charlie. There's a lot of branding going on here.
Yeah.
Tell us about it.
So I think on the brand side, I think it's very interesting. I think on the taste side as well, it's really interesting meeting the different characters that we've been involved with on working on this development. And this has been a sort of 7-year project for the family that I work for. To give a bit of background to the project, it's a 120-year-old building, so it's a very sensitive amount of design and refurbishment and redevelopment that's gone on under the watchful eye of various government bodies, making sure we don't remove this fireplace or this wall here and anything else. So it's been an exciting journey. But I think, going a little bit back to what the last panel were talking about in terms of brands and stories, I think, to your point about taste, I think the people I've met so far, the taste they have in common is they want something which is, I think, genuine, which has got a genuine authenticity and story behind it. And I think for me, with this particular development, this building here, I think it's been really interesting seeing and pulling out the various brands and stories within the building and learning about it as we go along. So, for example, we have Churchill's office in the building, but prior to that, it was occupied by Mr. Profumo. So there's some, going back to your point about sexual productivity.
Is there going to be a Profumo suite?
There might well be. There might well be with all sorts of red lights and soft furnishings. But I think it is this storytelling. And we went into the suite and we said, why is the wood here a different colour to the wood elsewhere? And his wife came in. She said they like the wood, so she painted it blue. And stayed blue for about 3 or 4 years, or 5 or 6 years, and they peeled it off and found all sorts of things behind it. So there's some quite fun storytelling. I think that leads into that taste piece you're talking about.
Yeah. Well, I think brands, taste. It's all related. They're both different expressions of the same idea. Basically, that there's no neutrality in the modern world. Everything has meaning, whether you want it to or not. I mean, you can't even say, you can't decided to walk around naked because I don't want to be judged by my clothes. So that's making a statement. I often come across people who say, I'm not interested in cars, I just drive an old Volvo, which of course means I'm actually extremely interested in cars. I just happen to want you to know that I prefer an old Volvo. No, it's true. You can't, everything reveals something. There is no neutrality. You can not claim neutrality in anything. About, I know you've just been speaking about brands before, but it's something which preoccupies me. I think brands are all about, I'm often asked how to define what a brand is. It's about a successful brand, what defines successful brands is associations and expectations, a combination of these things. Associations, sort of things which go back to the past and history, and expectations of how you think something might be in future. Your site particularly interests me because there's a long history of branding here, perhaps even which you're unaware of. The actual War Office was, I think, founded as a Department of Government in 1718. Of course, the building is much later than that. The actual War Office, it was called that, founded in 1718. But in 1964, they tastefully decided to call it the Ministry of Defence. So instead of talking about aggression, it suddenly became much more amiable. It became a more defensive government department. But you're completely unsqueamish about holding on to the War Office. But I'd be the last one to sprout wokeisms or be obedient about compulsory pieties today. But you're not worried about having a building called War, I think the old War Office.
Yeah, I think it's a good point, actually. And I think it's amazing the number of comments we get from people saying how insensitive of you to call it or have reference to it with what's going on in Ukraine and the else. Well, the building's it's a lot older than the conflict's been going on in Ukraine. So I think it was very interesting. When we went down the branding route of the building, we have this incredible building. We need to reference its past. And I think going to your point about referencing the past and the expectation for the future is a very interesting point with this building. You know, this building was built as a machine of war. As we ran into the First and Second World War, the stories that I'm sure those wars could tell would be fascinating. Conflicts were won and lost in that building. And I think what's quite nice, the vision that we have created is that the future of that building will be one of a celebration of life. And that's why we're working so hard with these 9 or 10, different restaurants and bars within the building. It's a huge culinary piece there because I think people want to celebrate life, particularly post-pandemic. They want to go out, they want to eat, they want to have these amazing culinary experiences. And I think transforming a building which has been shut off for 120 years to the public because of all the spies and all sorts of defence people working it out, to now opening up to the public and saying, come in and see what's behind these doors, look at the heritage, the history, the incredible staircase, Churchill's office, all that sort of stuff. I think it'll be a really exciting moment, and I think it's a lovely way to reincarnate a building.
Well, no, I think in branding terms, it's extremely brave of you. Of course, there's an even more precarious branding proposition on one of the other great institutions of London, just on the other side of the river. Of course, the Imperial War Museum, and that hasn't, there are three prospects, which probably three words, which are really, really quite difficult to sell nowadays: Imperial War and Museum. But they do very well.
Perhaps selling it rebrand as the IWM, like we've done.
Yes. But the Raffles is another. So you've got that sort of overarching OWO War Office. And how do you expect the hotel to become known? Is it become known as OWO? Is that what you expect?
I think the hotel. I think these things have a way of working themselves out. I think we would like it to be referred to as Raffles at the OWO. But I suspect in time, like a lot of these places, it'll be more and more regarded as Raffles London or Raffles London at the OWO. Okay.
Because then now Raffles, and I'm not trying to, I'm fully endorse your endeavour. I think it's very exciting. I love seeing fine old buildings, come to life. But so I'm not trying to ask you a difficult question, but there's something else though, which you. So some people might say you've got a problem with branding about Raffles. It does speak of colonialism. After all, Sir Stamford Raffles was the person who founded Singapore, and he said you could say it in his day, but you couldn't say it now. He said, my determination is to civilise the East. You at all worried about that?
No, I think that's a good question. I think that there's a lot of history there with the Raffles brand, and the history. I think it's very interesting. Sir Terence Raffles and how he created Singapore and founded that amazing hotel there. I think today that brand association, and that's one of the reasons we worked with Raffles, is because people see it as synonymous with exquisite service, excellent service levels, and a friendly staff that they treat as family. I think So that's probably more the cognizant sort of relation that the buyers have.
No, of course, because I was only being slightly mischievous. I mean, when I think I'm fortunate enough to have visited the Raffles, and I went there, of course, looking for Somerset Maugham wearing a white suit and enjoying a Singapore sling under the frangipani tree, which I don't know whether you're going to have frangipani trees in Whitehall, but you're certainly going to have Singapore slings.
We might have a London sling, so a bit of a quirk.
I actually checked. You can see why Singapore slings became popular. I mean, I did my due diligence before coming here and speaking to Charlie and find out what it was. It was perfected in 1915 by a barman called Ngiam Tong Boon. I said, no wonder it became popular as it contained, listen to this, gin, Angostura bitters, lime, cherry brandy, grenadine, Cointreau, Benedictine and pineapple juice, and traditionally garnished with the slice of orange and a maraschino cherry, and perhaps one of those nice little parasols. But what would be in the London sling? Would you?
Do you know what? Fortunately, Stephen, I'm not in charge of the ingredients going to the London sling, but I think it's quite nice to keep that connection with what Raffles is about and the cocktail hour.
But yeah, well, I don't need persuading about cocktail hours, but the earlier the better. But how far do you think, though, you're extending the Raffles brand, but semantically, when you extend things, there's the danger of stretching them and breaking them.
Correct.
How far do you think you can extend the Raffles brand?
Yeah, I think it's very interesting. I think so we look very hard at various different hotel brands when we decided to develop the OWO. And I think one of the interesting things about the Raffles brand is they are very keen to preserve the heritage and city that they're operating in. So, for example, they've been looking for about 20 years to open this flagship hotel in the UK. It had to be London, tick. They did not want a glass and steel skyscraper in Canary Wharf. They wanted something which was British, that would be synonymous with what people feel about London. And I think it doesn't get much more London, much more British than the OWO. Interesting enough, some of the other brands we spoke to, big hotel brands that people here will know very well, they were offering a lot more money and more interesting terms than the current brand that we went for. But there was no soul to what the brand was offering. They wanted to carbon copy the existing hotel concept globally, and it's a brand that you all know very well. But if you walk, their idea is you walk into one, you've walked into all of them, and you feel at home because you know exactly where the desk is. It's that beige gold, the colour, blah blah blah. And as we thought, we can't work with that. We've got to have something which is very sort of integral to the actual building.
Are you at all worried about the? No, she's not worried. You're very pleased with it, and it's a terrific building. But about Whitehall, which can be. He's obviously got associations with government, and the great architect Ian Nairn described it again, as a reference to sort of Raffles in Singapore. He says described the whole Whitehall scene as the Indian summer of empire. And Nairn also said the overdressed emptiness of many of the buildings. He also said Horse Guards Parade, just opposite you, was a blatant tourist trap, neither better nor worse than a Soho striptease club. Well, I can't imagine striptease occurring on Horse Guards Parade, but what I'm trying to ask you, in a hotelier's terms, it's not a. It's an area with, like they talk about over tourism in Venice. There's a lot of what you might call over tourism going on on at Whitehall.
Yep.
You're concerned about that? How are you going to?
Yeah, we talked about Venice earlier on, and I think that Whitehall has. There's a reason there's a lot of tourists there because it's full of beautiful old buildings and a lot of pomp and ceremony with the horse guards and everything else. I think for us, Whitehall as a destination is changing, and I think the big drive for that change is what we're doing at the OWO. I think if we were building a block of flats, Stephen, with no hotel and no restaurants and bars and clubs and ballrooms and all that sort of stuff, then I think it would be a very boring standalone building. But I think by creating it as a destination for people to go to, and as I mentioned, the idea is if you can go to the OWO and have lunch and dinner there 5 times a week and eat or experience something different every time, that's a pretty compelling reason to be down there and to enjoy it. And I think a lot of our buyers love the fact you can walk across the road to St James's Park in 30 seconds. It's a great boon for us. And I think particularly post-pandemic, the pull for that green space is really important. So I think as a location, it's really going to transform over the next year or so.
Well, that would be wonderful, because I'm always personally mystified by how unbelievably tacky the Trafalgar Square end of Whitehall is. It'd be wonderful to have it in the same. I think There's another thing I want to talk to you about. There's just, architects talk about creative reuse of old buildings, which is going to become increasingly important because the great majority of CO2, carbon pollution, bad stuff, comes from construction, and there's going to be ever more inclination to reuse existing buildings than make new ones. And interesting, just on the other side of the river, because another perfect example of creative reuse is, of course, Battersea Power Station, where they've kept this crumbling old wreck. It's been magnificently, restored and generated, for a long time. That part of London around Battersea was really forlorn, and now it's become it's extraordinary life and activity there. However, I've got one, and I'm here to ask you annoying questions. Are you at all worried about London becoming Disneyfied?
Yes.
Or perhaps that is the inevitable fate of cities like London. I don't know.
Yeah. I think London is an incredible city which has got so much history and culture to offer. We probably have more international visitors, and I think we have one of the biggest in Europe, certainly for international visitors and residents as well. And I think that's because we have this amazing ability to all rub along together. And I think, so is it going to become Disneyfied? No, I don't think it will be. I think what it'll be continue to draw people to come and see the interest in the buildings, and the shows and the culture and the food and the restaurants and everything else.
Yeah. I think that's absolutely true. There is the most extraordinary dynamic in London at the moment. It's and in my view, while obviously nobody who lives here knows all the shortcomings of living in London, but I think overall it's the most organic and organically vital and exciting place on earth. There are lots of places, other cities, which do lots of things better, but I think as a whole there's more positive stuff going on in London than anywhere else. So hugely exciting. But, however, again, just a sort of difficult question. Patterns of travel are changing, aren't they? Air travel, for instance. I think who's going to? How confident are you? It's not for me to ask business questions. I can ask questions about style and taste and design. But how confident are you that the future is going to involve people jetting around the world from one grand hotel to the next? Fine if they do, sure. But I must say this must have crossed your mind that this may not.
I think it's a very good point. I think I haven't seen the numbers from Heathrow or Farnborough or Biggin Hill, but I think we are more or less back to pre-pandemic levels. I think people thought there's this great change going to happen post-pandemic and no one would ever jump on a plane again. I think actually what's happened is the exact reverse. Is people have been
so can't wait to get.
They can't get away from their wives, their families, or anything else. But they want to get on a plane, go and experience stuff, go back to their cities again. And people talk about this meta, and you put this VR headset on, you go and explore cities. I don't buy it. I know I'm probably in the minority, but I think people want to go around, smell, touch, feel, and experience things for their actual for themselves. I
agree absolutely. I think there's going to have to be a change in air travel. I think even Michael O'Leary of Ryanair recently said the low cost era is over. Yeah. But I think people are always going to want to go to meet other people. So working from home, for instance, isn't going to work because people will realise that working from home does nothing for their career prospects because you have to mingle with people in order to make a case for yourself. And secondly, very, very soon, of course, energy costs will make the cost of commuting will become trivial compared to staying at home. So I think lots of I'm a sort of bruised optimist about things. I think these things will continue, but I think what we need about air travel, and I'm only saying air travel because clearly it's an international. Your clients are going to be international people. Yeah. I think we're going to have not more air travel, but less, but of higher quality.
Correct, I think, Stephen, the people that we've seen who've come to the OWO and bought the OWO, some of them often have multiple homes around the world. And where we talk about air travel, I think what we might see less of is as you say, the frequency of travel, but the quality of travel increase. So I think where you'll see these people moving around to see London for the summer period, they won't go to London and back out again within a week. They'll go to London, they'll stay in London for 4 to 5 to 6 weeks and base themselves there for a longer period. That's exactly what I meant about, that's my vision of the future, less but better and longer and less frenzy. I'm absolutely certain that's right. Now, another thing which though I want to test you on is
about ideas of luxury and how they're changing. Do you regard before I ask you my question, the wonderful observation about luxury from the French couturier Coco Chanel. She said luxury is not the opposite of poverty, it's the opposite of vulgarity. That's to say, she believes this is the woman responsible for the little black dress. You can get great pleasure from the simplest things of the highest quality. Now, do you have a working definition of luxury? You presumably regard your product as it's a luxury.
So I don't think we're allowed to use that word anymore. I think marketeers are not allowed to use the O word. It's overused.
Isn't that interesting? It's like executive. You can't say executive. Executive was meaningful once, but it's now condemnatory. Like deluxe used to be. There used to be. I'm old enough to remember when some certain cars had badges on them called deluxe.
The deluxe.
Yes.
Random Plus.
Yeah. So again with luxury, it's actually.
I think it's an overused word, and I think different people's interpretation of what luxury is quite interesting. I think I'm very much on point with you, Stephen. I think, and Miss Chanel as well, that it doesn't have to be over opulent for something to be luxurious. I think it has to be something done very well to a high quality, and I think having authenticity is absolutely key, and respecting what you're creating. So I think that's been a big pull for us in the redevelopment of the OWO. We're not trying to make it brash. We're not trying to make it bling. We're trying to respect the history and heritage of the building, bring it up to 21st century, and we believe in turn that will create a luxurious product.
Mm. Yes, so it's more about almost intangibles than tangibles. So are there going to be more Raffles in this country?
So good question. I think they currently have about 17 hotels around the world. Mm. They're opening a few more. I think Boston is coming online. So there's no Raffles at the moment currently in the US, and they're creating Boston, which will be open online I think next year, which is very exciting. But I think also what's quite nice as well is they want to cap the number of hotels, Raffles hotels, they have globally, because I think slightly to what I'm sure you're alluding to is you can overspread the brand, and then the actual brand identity starts thinning out.
Because and I go back to another French couturier, Pierre Cardin, who had a perfectly good reputation as a dressmaker. Then he was the man who actually virtually invented brand extension. Somebody told him, you can make a lot of money if you put your name on frying pans and ballpoint pens. And of course he did, and no doubt he made a little bit of money out of frying pans and ballpoint pens, but of course completely ruined his reputation as a dressmaker who wants to buy an expensive couture gown which was made by someone who appears to make frying pans. It sort of didn't make sense. So I think that the branding is very, very, very. Everything to do with branding is quite. It's almost mystical. As I said, it's more about intangibles. But I think. Obviously one of the great examples of all time is Apple. And they great brands. And they work almost like a religion. You have to have an articulate spokesman. You have to have a set of beliefs. You also have to have icons like religion have. Symbols and things. What I'm leading up to saying is, and then again talking about Raffles and the brand and how far can you extend it. For someone of my generation who used to read Somerset Maugham as a teenager, as I said, I have a very clear vision of Raffles, which was enhanced when I first visited. In America, have you done research on this? Does what Raffles mean anything to Americans?
So I think the Americans, under the Accor brand or umbrella, you have Raffles and you also have Fairmont. Fairmont is a much more well-known brand in the US, and I think they're now trying to create and build that Raffles portfolio. But it's interesting, going back to your point about sort of brand aficionados, we've had a surprising number of people come to us and buy at the OWO because they're Raffles loyalists. They love Raffles and they follow the brand wherever it goes around the world. So it's quite interesting. I think you're seeing that sort of that loyalty and identity with that particular brand and how powerful that is in making a purchasing decision.
What's your feeling in the larger sense, not about Raffles, but the whole Grand Hotel phenomenon? Is it something which is it moribund? Is it vital? Is it going away? Is it coming back, or what?
Yeah, I think again post-pandemic, I think where people haven't had the ability to enjoy these lovely grand hotels, and I'm not sure about you, but if I get invited to a lunch or a breakfast in a hotel or a coffee, you feel a bit more when you walk through the front doors, and providing what kind of hotel it is and what sort of brand it is, but you feel quite smart. You feel it's an exciting experience, and I think that sort of that heightened level of enjoyment, I think,
Yes.
should we say, is something which I don't think will ever go away. And I think people, again, wanting to travel now, having been at home for such a long period of time, will probably spend it, and we're seeing it now with these other brands. Instead of buying the £30 bottle of wine, they're going to probably buy the £45 bottle of wine because they haven't bought the £30 bottle of wine for 2 years.
Yeah.
So they've made a bit of money, they've saved it up, and they want to increase and enhance their experience. And I think that, in my mind, is where these incredible hotels will really thrive.
Yeah, no, I think that's absolutely true. But there's that again, it's so much about intangibles, but it's about things you can detect rather than define. And that takes frankly, a certain amount of artistry, which is why I think, without trying to sound ludicrous, brand management at its best approaches art because it is, as I said, all about people's expectations or realizations and providing the experience. Well, look, that's wonderful. I think just before we open up for some questions, I've got to tell you my final anecdote. I'm only saying finally, you may have something to say about this notorious question of taste. My old chum, the decorator, Nicky Haslam, had the opportunity of asking Her Majesty the Queen once. He said, "Ma'am, what do you think about taste?" And she told him, "I don't think it helps." I'll just leave it with you. So anyway, I think you've got I can't wait to see it. I think it looks like a fascinating project, and bringing new life to an area of, a magnificent area of London, but also one which is at the moment lacks. It lacks the right sort of human dynamic. A wonderfully exciting project, and it represents for me as well. I think architecture is my background. I think the creative reuse of interesting old buildings is something that we're going to see necessarily a lot more of. So I greatly look forward to enjoying the results.
Good, Stephen. We'll have a drink on the rooftop. A London sling.
Okay, now I think there's a few minutes for some questions, if anybody has one. I can see a microphone, but I can't see a question. Well, we've baffled everybody into a state of uncritical,
they're all very hungry.
Uncritical
They're all very hungry,
narcosis. They're all just waiting for lunch. Well, there we are. Oh, there is a question.
One question.
Hi, I'm from Simone Deal Architects. I'm Leslie. I just wanted to ask, in your development, how much is the handcrafted section a part of the development compared to the manufactured? Because you spoke about the community and bringing in the story and the narrative of London into it. How much is it involved in the development?
Yeah, thank you for that. So we've, as of today, I'm not sure, at lunchtime they probably will be knocking off, but we've got about 1,200 people on site at the moment who are frantically busy trying to sort of finish off the building and get it ready for opening. But I think what's been very interesting is seeing the craftsmanship and the specialist trades that have come in. For example, we've got a set of fireplace surrounds in the building which predate the building. I think they're from about the 18th century. These things I've never seen a fireplace like this. It's so ornate, the carving, the marble, everything else is incredible. There's only a handful of people in the country who can touch that and actually refurbish it and get it back up to working order. So to answer your question, we've had an amazing number of different trades working in the building and different specialties from cornicing to the woods to the mosaic flooring. These are all elements that we've had to protect and look after. And it's been amazing seeing them come back, and hopefully you'll get to see them when it's all finished.
We can certainly have questions in the room, but we've also got some that have come in via Slido. Charlie, what is the range of prices and sizes of the residences, somebody asks?
Okay, thanks. So that hopefully means you've got some buyers in the room, which is very exciting. So they start from about £4 million, and they go considerably up from there. Sizes-wise, I think they're very generous. We have a range of 1 to 5 bedrooms in the building. And the sizes are all very much on the generous scale. I think that's really driven by the shape of the building, the floor plate and the design. If you have a new building, which is created by a house builder, then you can almost be very efficient in how you create the building because it's starting from scratch. Whereas we inherit these, for example, we inherited 2.5 miles of corridor, 1,100 offices. So to carve all that up and chop it up and turn it into, living accommodation, residences, which people really will enjoy and receive well, has been quite a sort of labour of love.
Fantastic. And this is just from me, but the square footage of the residences, what do they range from the smallest to the largest?
Yeah, so I think we're about, 750, 800 square feet, probably the smallest, up to just under 8,000 square foot.
Okay. And another question from Slido is, which markets do you expect to be most popular in terms of buyers?
Yeah, interesting question. So my prediction's been thrown completely into chaos before I started this role, and it's been great to see the different nationalities come in. Our biggest nationality group, funnily enough, has been British. I think they get the area, they love the building and the history, but followed very closely by Americans. So the Americans, obviously, the currency position at the moment is extremely favourable for them. But again, they love the storytelling of the building, they love the James Bond connections, the fact that Ian Fleming worked in the building, Churchill's there. So I think it was the American market's been really, really taken by it.
And is there anything that people here don't yet know about the OWO that you think they should? Has there been something that you haven't had a chance to communicate?
So I think, watch this space. So I think we'll be announcing some amazing restaurant and Michelin star chefs that we're going to be collaborating with in the building, which is very exciting. And on opening, there'll be another secret reveal, F&B reveal, which will happen, which will be announced in due course. But it's very exciting.
Okay, very good. And there's one actually that's just come in, which is what accounts for the rise of the branded residence in London?
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting question. I think London is relatively slow to the game in terms of branded residences. New York was the birthplace of branded residences, and then places like Dubai have taken that up very quickly. I think the driver behind it in terms of the demand is because I think people want to have to enjoy their apartments and their residences, but have them fully serviced and looked after by a specific brand. I think that's the real drive. Again, post-pandemic, people are short on time, and they want the time they spent to be of the highest quality. So I think for someone to be able to arrive at their residence knowing that it's being fully looked after, cleaned, turned down, fridge stocked, car valeted, it's a real turnkey service. I think that's a really exciting proposition.
Well, that's what a brand as a promise.
Yeah, correct, yeah. A promise of delivery and service, exactly right.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, yeah, you spoke about the history of the brand and its heritage and so on, but are there other ways in which the Raffles serviced residences will be different from some of the other sort of leading offerings that we already see in London?
Yeah, I think. Well, firstly, this is the first Raffles branded residence in Europe, so it's a big deal for the company. And I think in terms of differentiation, I think one of the key differentiators is the fact that the residences are co-located with a hotel, which for me is absolutely paramount if you're going to offer a hotel service. A lot of branded residences call themselves branded residences or associate with the hotel, but the hotel is nowhere to be seen, or it's a couple of kilometres away down Park Lane, wherever it is. And I think whilst that's all well and good, I think you have to question what is the service offering. Here we've got 400 staff running around looking after a 5-star hotel who effectively are at your beck and call as a resident, which I think is a pretty exciting and unique sort of prospect.
Absolutely. And we do have a question the old-fashioned way from the audience. Yes,
Thank
please,
you.
sir.
The security. You obviously have an obligation to secure the individual premises, the perimeter of your property. You're in an area which is increasingly prone to street-side robbery at the moment. Watch thefts and robbery is rife at the moment. But also, it's an area that's well known to be prone for protest and activism. So what sort of security measures do you put in for the residents?
Yeah, I think it's a good question. I think security as a sort of general topic of conversation is really interesting because we're seeing a lot of our buyers who are coming out of bigger houses in, say, Belgravia and Mayfair, where they feel actually that they don't like the upkeep of it. They don't like the fact they can't go away on holiday. They're worried the roof's going to leak, etc., etc. So there's a hassle factor to it. But also from a security point of view, there are too many stories of people breaking into these high-end houses, and we've all read the news and seen them. So I think that's driven a lot of the interest for people coming to someone like the OWO and other branded residences because the security is much, much higher. I think at our building specifically, because we have taken a 250-year lease from the MOD, who is our neighbour, I think our security measures have to be even higher than any other standard building, and that goes from cameras to MPRs and everything else. In fact, you're probably not going to find a more secure building in London. If the MOD is your neighbour, I'll be amazed if you do get robbed outside. So it has its upsides, which I sure think is very good. But I think security is a really important point because I think it's a big driver for a lot of our buyers.
Well, I'm just very glad you haven't called it Raffles at the MOD.
We might extend, you know, Stephen. Yeah.
No. Indeed. Well, we have run out of time, but ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much indeed. A wide-ranging conversation covering the proclivities of Profumo, Singapore slings, and brands as a religion. But Charlie and Stephen, thank you very much indeed for joining us. Thank you.
Thank you.